good.
That's right.
It's great to meet you. Where are you located?
I am in South Carolina.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Well, I'm in the middle of America. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting into your story as an educator. And to begin that journey, I know that we're getting to a point now where we're getting fatigued by even talking about or thinking about the COVID time period, the pandemic era.
Mhm.
But it was such a big deal. It was so monumental for all of us in so many ways, especially
Yes.
education. How did you
Mhm.
survive that time period, and how has it changed the way that you do things now?
So, actually, I have a very interesting story with COVID. I apologize. I'm holding my daughter
You're
as we
fine. No,
talk.
it's good. It's all good.
I I have a very interesting story with COVID because I was actually in China working as a reading specialist when COVID hit.
Wow.
Yes. So, my experience with COVID was very different from most people's. But I saw a huge shift in the education world in China. It was incredibly disruptive, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
We were actually in an area that was considered the best area in China to be in as far as COVID, as far as controlling COVID. So as far as, people getting sick and dying, that wasn't really an issue. Even mass quarantine wasn't really an issue. There were times that we had to stay at home and that was scary and be tested and what have you. But the main thing was that it was just incredibly disruptive for children. I worked at a boarding school, and the students were from all over the area. Within about, maybe 60-mile radius, they would come and board and go home on the weekends. And where we were, there was hardly ever any outbreaks. They did an amazing job in Guangzhou, which is where I was. But the neighboring city of Shenzhen had what we would consider incredibly small outbreaks, so small that you wouldn't even consider it an outbreak. But for China, because they were being so strict, and there were reasons for that, they were very strict. And so the children in Shenzhen for a long time could not go home on the weekends. And that made a huge impacts socio-emotional needs.
Yeah.
Children suddenly can't go home and see their families. That's a huge deal, especially when you're in middle or high school. So that was one thing, it's just a huge socio-emotional impact.
Yeah.
The other thing was just the mass, I guess the interruptions to education. So when COVID hit, we were actually on vacation. And that's one thing I don't think people understand about COVID in China is that it was during Chinese New Year, which is the biggest Lunar New Year, as people call it. And it is the biggest mass migration on Earth. Everyone literally goes home to their home villages, their ancestral villages, or where their families are, who lives in the cities. So we were actually all on vacation, and I was able to make it back. I did have to do a 2-week quarantine at a hotel, which is fine. That's a whole other story. But multiple teachers did not make it back. They were stuck in the United States, or they were stuck in, some of them were stuck in other parts of Asia. So that was incredibly disruptive. And so children didn't get their main teachers. They were doing Zoom classes, which isn't really helpful. Um, it's better than nothing, but it just isn't great.
Yeah.
So the main thing that I saw was disruption. Also at the very end, there was a lot of testing going on. About every other day, students were being tested. So from what I saw, that was the main thing was just a lot of interruption.
Yeah.
China also underwent a mass exodus of particularly foreign workers, foreign teachers, because it's very difficult to live under those circumstances if you're not used to it. And a lot of people, like I said, were stuck, and some people could not get back.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing now is a huge, again, and it's similar to what I saw in China, kind of on a different scale, but I'm seeing socio-emotional impacts. Children just cannot sit still. They can't interact with each other. Children are very hungry for interaction. That's what I'm seeing at I taught last year at a middle school, and that's what I saw a lot is that children would just try to talk to each other all the time. And of course, as a teacher, you think they're not being respectful, they're just being really difficult. But they were literally just so hungry for play, for
Yeah.
communication, and they didn't have boundaries because for several years, their lives are so interrupted.
Yeah.
They don't know how to behave, and some of them don't know how to learn. And they were seeing this worldwide, and the research shows it as well, is that children just kind of forgot how to learn in a structured environment. The stamina is very low worldwide, and this started before COVID. Really in 2011, 2012, when smartphones came out, that's when we started seeing a lot of these problems starting. Because smartphones, particularly for children, there's a really excellent book called The Anxious Generation that talks about this. Um, Smartphones, particularly for children and teens, are very harmful because children do not read, they don't interact, they're just on the phone all the time. So we started seeing this in 2011, 2012, but what COVID did was it just accelerated everything.
Yeah, it certainly did. And I'm an IT technician for a school district,
Okay.
so and my wife's a teacher, so I've seen firsthand how all of these things, like you've said, this is probably one of the better descriptions that I've heard about exactly the impact that the kids have gone through. That social emotional thing was just really, really difficult. And I don't know when they're going to get their footing again with all of those lost years. I really feel like they're still kind of hurtling in orbit. They haven't picked up some of the skills they need, but at least we're back and they're getting back into it. So I think, you know, hopefully they'll get back to where they should be. But I'm curious on a daily basis, if you were to be put in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day and one of the kids was curious about what you do every day and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Well, that is a work in progress because up until last year, I was a teacher and that was my identity. I taught school. I was, a professor for a short time, an instructor. I wasn't a professor, I was an instructor at a college. And I was a student. I was a PhD student for a long time. But after my child was born, we moved also during this time. And I wanted to do something more flexible. And I also wanted to use my PhD maybe in a way that was a little unusual or unique. Um, and for our family, I wanted to make some money. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that.
Yeah.
So my goal right now is I call myself an entrepreneur, an educational entrepreneur. And I don't even really like using that term because it sounds like school choice, which is a whole other thing that I'm not really into.
Yeah.
But my goal is to use what I know to help others kind of in an independent way. So I've written a book called Not Just Pirates. That is a book for struggling readers or for new readers of English who are in middle or high school. Um, that was my first project. And now I have founded a company called Achieve Leap, and I'm working on some courses. I'm probably going to start with parrot workshops, parrot training for parents who maybe from different cultures, maybe from different language backgrounds, who just don't understand their child's school, who want to be more involved with school, but don't really understand what's going on culturally and so forth, and the academic standards. So that is something I've just started really very recently. Last week, I kind of got it off the ground. So I guess I could say I'm an educational entrepreneur right now.
Okay. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I really wanted to be a writer.
Okay. So you're
Yeah.
doing exactly what you wanted to do.
Yes, I don't know if that will be a full-time job. But from a very young age, I was very interested in writing. I remember writing in fourth and fifth grade, writing stories. I never really went anywhere. But I was always really interested in reading and writing. My family is very interested in reading. My mother, they used to call her the book woman because for Christmas every year, she still to this day gives children's books. My daughter is 11 weeks old, and my mom has already sent, books like every 2 weeks, probably she sends some books. So reading was always part of our family, and I kind of extended that to writing.
So what was your favorite book growing up?
My favorite book. I would have to say, as an upper elementary school, maybe lower middle school student, my favorite author was Madeline Eagle, and my favorite book was probably A Wrinkle in Time.
Okay.
I really loved that book. I loved the fantasy of it, but it was in an easy to read way.
Yeah.
When I was really young, like first, second, third grade, I liked the Ramona Quimby books
Yeah.
by Beverly Cleary. That was
Yep.
like my favorite series. And then as I got a little older, I got into some other things. So the Avoid, the Homecoming series was very meaningful for me. Um, so I had like wide range of books really. But I remember Madeline Engel all along was my favorite. Like even when I was a young adult, I would read her YA books.
Yeah. So talk to me about the seeds that were planted into you. Take me back to where you were born and raised, and what were the seeds that eventually sprouted into you getting into education and wanting to teach people and to go for a PhD, which is one of the harder things to do on this planet. How did all of this kind of evolve into you?
Well, the seeds go really far back. My grandmother and my great aunt were both teachers.
Okay.
My grandmother, kind of like me, had a very varied career. She didn't just stay in one subject area. She she was in South Carolina in the 1940s to about the 1980s, I guess, off and on. And she was very diverse. She started with music teaching, then she was a librarian, then she was at an elementary school, then she was guidance counselor. Like she just kept on changing. She was very interested in learning. And I think I kind of got that spirit from her, even though I'm the only one of her grandchildren who's gone into education. Um, and also on my father's side, both of my cousins went into education, even though my grandmother was not a teacher. So I feel like there is something that drew us genetically to that. And then as a child, again, I was just really into reading, writing, learning. I was kind of a nerd as a child. Then when it was not my original plan to go into education. I actually wanted to work overseas, um, actually doing missionary work, which is interesting because now that's just very different from what I want to do now.
Yeah.
But that didn't work out, and so I went into teach. I went into a TESOL master's program, teaching English as speakers of other languages with the goal of going overseas and doing some work. And I didn't get overseas for 12 years. I ended up kind of accidentally falling into ESL teaching in rural schools, and I absolutely loved it. That still is kind of my passion is small groups or individual students who have varying needs. I feel like you can really reach students that way, and that is that just it's very meaningful work. But I was ready to move on that community and to do something further. And I had the chance to get my EDS in reading, and the the county, again, this is very unusual. Everything just kind of lined into place. The district actually aligned with the University of Tennessee. They did a whole overhaul of the reading program, and they also trained, it was either, I think it was 21 of us total, to go back and become reading specialists. And that was so monumental both to my teaching and to the school, the school district. The district went way up with their scores. I mean, we're talking like they doubled their scores in reading. Pretty amazing work. And so I was just really interested in furthering that and getting more involved with the reading field. I saw it was possible. So I went back and got my PhD, and then I had the opportunity to go to China, and then I decided to come home after that.
So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your career?
Um, there are lots of people. I remember when I was in high school, I did a teacher cadet program, and she's the one who kind of Joan Bass, and I'm not even sure. She was older then. I'm sure she's not teaching now. But she was kind of an inspiration. Really got me involved with thinking about teaching, even though I didn't initially go into that in college. Um, Then I had the chance to study over some pretty amazing people. The one I'm thinking of in my head is Deborah Wooden, who is just an amazing mentor. She has done so much for education. She has published, amazing works, nationally, internationally known, and I'm so fortunate to work under her. Um, I also had the chance to work under Dick Allington and Miguel Franzen, who are both, huge scholars in the field. And I barely got to work with them. They retired several years ago. Um, and so, yeah, those people are just ones who really advocated for education and who advocated for reading. Um, yeah.
So what is your what is your motivation every day? What motivates you to do this work that you do? You have to give a lot of yourself to help others get to a better place educationally and overall, but you also have to evolve and grow as a human. What is that collective energy every day for you?
From the get-go, when I was in grad school, I feel like I had a real sense of justice, of educational equity. And I think that was what led me to stay in the United States for so long with ESL, because I saw the huge need for equity in education, and I saw how the system just does not work for some students, and some students are marginalized just because of differences. In this case, language and cultural differences. Of course, there are students who have other differences that make it harder for them. But I also saw that the amazing potential that was being missed as a teacher. These students had amazing potential and were some of the brightest students in the school, but sometimes that was not seen and sometimes that was not nurtured um, systematically. It's very systematic. It's not the teachers. The teachers are doing the best they can under the circumstances. So I really wanted to make a difference, and this is one way to make a difference in a way that is a little more unique to me, that follows my skill set, which is a pretty unique skill set, I think.
So of everything that you've accomplished in your career, what are you the proudest of?
Um, that is a very good question. I have to think for a minute. I'm very proud that I finished my PhD. Um, it was a difficult time. There was a lot going on in that program. And there's a lot going on in general in higher ed, but I am really proud that I finished it. I guess personally, that's what I'm proud of, but professionally, I am very proud of the work I did as an itinerant ESL teacher in rural schools. It may have only been a few students that were impacted, but I felt like I really made a huge difference. There are multiple students who basically went from not reading at all to being on grade level and not needing any services and having bright futures. So I am really proud of that work as well.
So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that gets your book, everyone that you work with, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your
Mhm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I like to think of myself as a developer, in that I develop students, I develop knowledge among families, and hopefully I help develop the school system and schools further to further help students, particularly students from different backgrounds.
So if anyone wants to pick up your book, they want to hire you, learn more about you, reach out, how can they do
Mhm.
that?
Okay, so my Facebook handle is English Reading Place. I also have a YouTube channel you can just Google, and my business name that it's under is Achieve Link, ACHIEVE Link, LINK. I also have a web page and it's kind of long, but if you just Google Emily Sherwood Achieve Link, you will find that. As far as the book is available right now on Amazon. And actually, in the next couple of days, we're hoping to get the workbook, the companion workbook uploaded. So there will be a book and a workbook. And the book is not just a regular book, it's scaffolded so that students can access it even if they have very low English or reading skills. Um, and it also contains games at the end, like
Okay.
games help children learn particularly vocabulary related to pirates, related to to um, just regular life in English as well. Uh, the book also has a glossary at the end that includes pictures and it includes definitions. So it's just a really ideal book for middle and high school students. So if you just Google my name, Sherwood Emily Pirates, it will come right up. And I have an author page in there as well.
Excellent. Dr. Sherwood, this has been great. Thank you so much for your story. You've multitasked very well, and I appreciate you taking time out today.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for being patient with my little one.
Oh
She's
yeah,
very
no, it's
excited
great.
today.
I love it. I love the added elements that come into it. So it's great. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Take care. See ya.